Now to Stevens Point for water sustainability and resource management of a different sort. With 15,000 lakes, there's water everywhere in Wisconsin, right? Well, wrong. According to a new report by the Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism, experts say the expansion of high-capacity wells is seriously drawing down groundwater as well as lakes and stream levels in central Wisconsin. The region is in the heart of our potato-growing region. You've no doubt seen those huge watering systems misting their way across the potato and cornfields outside of places like Plover. George Kraft is professor of water resources at UW-Stevens Point and UW Extension. He's studied the streams, lakes, and groundwater in central Wisconsin for many years. His extensive research was used in the report. He joins us now from Stevens Point. And Professor, thanks very much for doing so.
Good evening.
Well, what does your research say about water usage in the Central Sands region and whether or not that usage is in fact to blame for the drawdown of lake levels there?
Well, pretty much my work just confirmed what people predicted already in 1970s and a number of studies in the Central Sands that said, you know, when we get beyond a certain point of groundwater pumping, because groundwater is connected to lakes and connected to streams, if we pass a certain threshold, we're going to be making these water bodies unsustainable or sometimes dry. And indeed, that's what we've seen the last number of years, that these water bodies have become stressed in periods of relatively wet weather when you look at it over a decade, and still they're impaired.
So how critical would you regard this problem?
Well, for a lot of people, it's highly critical. When we're drying out streams, you know, the people who fish that stream or love cold water fisheries or live along there, it's critical for them. For people who have summer homes or fish a lot of these lakes that are effectively dead lakes, it's critical for them. It's a critical issue for the region because we're expanding high-capacity wells at the rate of 100, 150 a year, something like that. It's a critical region for Wisconsin because we're making more Central Sands regions in other parts of the state. And we can expect that, you know, give it a decade or two, we're going to be having water issues in those parts of the state as well.
Well, I was going to ask, is this particular to the Central Sands or is it across the state?
Unfortunately, you know, we haven't been doing a good job of tracking how much groundwater we're pumping and what the impacts are on our surface waters. Until the last few years, you know, we didn't have a clue. Now at least we know where the water is being pumped, but in most places besides the Central Sands, we haven't related that pumping to how much lower the lake levels are or how much reduced stream flows there are. That's still work that needs to be done through most of Wisconsin.
Now, is climate change, or could climate change, for example, last summer where it was so hot and dry, be the cause of these drawdowns?
Well, you know, given that in some places in central Wisconsin we've been seeing water levels declining for 40 years now, you know, in some places, other places, you know, since 1990, it's not like a sudden climate change is doing this. And the other thing, when we look at the climate record, we've seen that in central Wisconsin, it's actually been getting wetter. So we get about an inch more rain than average in Stevens Point. In Hancock and Wautoma, we get 2.5 inches more. So there isn't a climate a signal here that seems to be capable of causing the dry lakes and streams. If anything, it seems that we should be seeing higher water levels than we used to. And indeed, in nearby locations where we're not doing a lot of pumping, water levels are pretty robust and pretty high.
How does Wisconsin balance the need for water on the fields or in manufacturing or in municipalities with the need for water in the lakes? I mean, how do you balance this?
Good question. And you know, we haven't wanted to deal with that. You know, we've dealt with that with direct pumping out of surface waters, that people can pump waters out of lakes and water out of streams to a certain point, but then no more. And we haven't gotten there with groundwater yet. We could probably take our surface water laws and transition it to groundwater using the public trust doctrine and philosophy, and that would be one way of doing it. But we have not had the efforts and the legislature yet to go that direction and have been kind of grinding it out in the courts to this point to figure out how we're going to do it. But just because that we haven't had the discussion yet doesn't mean that lakes and streams are going dry. The longer we ignore it, the greater our problem will be when we finally come to grips with it.
Who needs to step up on this issue in your mind?
Well, ultimately, these sorts of things are in the legislature, and you can imagine it's a contentious and difficult thing for them to do when there are well-organized interests who want to pump a lot of water for economic purposes. And there's kind of a power disparity. We don't have a mirror of water advocates for lakes and streams of equal stature. So it's a tough job for them. And the most significant things have happened in the courts with common law and constitutional protections.
All right. Professor George Kraft, thanks very much for your work and expertise on this.
Thank you very much.